In this episode, I speak with Onslaught 6. He is currently crowdfunding the community magazine Ratcatchers, which features articles from multiple people in the Draw Steel community. We do talk about the magazine and the permissive license they're publishing under, but we start off with the Space Cowboy RPG that he designed, and how to find the right game for the right playgroup, and the OSR Mega Dungeon he recently published, Ruins of Castle Gygar. Oh, and by the way, before we start, I promised an interview with Hannah Rose this month, but because of scheduling, I've moved it to next month. I'm John Denor, and this is Goblin Points. Welcome to Goblin Points Onslaught 6.
I am happy to be here.
Tell us a bit about yourself and also how you came into the MCDM / Matt Colville community or sphere.
So I am Onslaught 6. I am a 30-something game designer and failed industrial musician. I am the head honcho of Tidal Wave Games, which is a front to rob the tabletop RPG community of money to give to my friends.
Fantastic. How did you end up in the... I know you mostly from the MCDM Discord server, and I've seen you put out Homebrew, and you also run Tidal Wave Games, but how did you end up in MCDM's sphere, or Matt Colville's sphere, probably?
So, I will give the abridged version of how I got to D&D. Basically, my father owned a game for the original Nintendo called Wizardry, which I actually have the manual for here. I keep it up here as inspiration.
Wow.
He had Wizardry 2, and it's basically a first-person old-school dungeon crawler. It's very similar to NetHack and like. And I was obsessed with this game because of its music and its vibe and all of that. And about 10 years later, when I was like 10 or 11, in the early 2000s, I discovered that Wizardry was actually a computer version of this thing called a pen and paper RPG called Dungeons and Dragons. And so I immediately became interested in trying to do that. And I was like, not anywhere that there was any gaming store at all. I live in rural Pennsylvania. I still do. And it's better now than it used to be. But it used to be you could not find a Dungeons and Dragons product within 50 miles. It was just like, it was impossible. And even if I could, I was an 11-year-old. I didn't have any money. And the third edition books that had just come out were like $35 each.
Right,
and you needed 3 of them to run the whole game. And my parents were not going to dump $100 on a hobby that the lonely kid who didn't have any friends couldn't engage with. Because I actually brought the player's handbook one time at a Barnes & Noble. I was like, hey, the Dungeons & Dragons book. And they were like, yeah, but do you have anyone to play that with other than your brother? And I was like, no. And they were like, then you probably shouldn't get it. Like, they didn't tell me that they wouldn't buy it for me, but they did like, you probably shouldn't get that. You should get something that you can engage with on your own. And I was like, okay. And that was sort of it until I briefly played a 3.5 game with some friends in the early 2010s, but around 2018, I had gotten married, and putting on a wedding is a big project. And so after the wedding, I was looking for a new project. I was like, well, I'm done with this. And so my wife and I went to MagFest, the Music and Gaming Festival, which is a big video game convention that's in Washington, D.C. We used to go every year. We stopped going right around the pandemic for unrelated reasons. It just got too expensive and kind of a pain in the ass to go. I still love all those people there. Anyway, when we went to one of the last MagFests that we went to, I was like, we should buy dice and start playing Dungeons and Dragons. This table down here has dice. We should just pick out some dice. And she was like, is that expensive? And I'm like, no, they're like $10. And so we each picked out a set, and then we went home, and like a month went by, and I went to my one friend who I always end up sitting next to the kids playing Magic the Gathering. This happened to me in high school too. And it was happening at work one night at my job, and I realized that I was once again in the position of being the guy who didn't play Magic the Gathering, sitting next to the Magic the Gathering kids, and I said, this can't happen again to me. These guys, we need to find a hobby that I can engage with. And I was like, you guys ever play Dungeons and Dragons? And they were like, oh, I used to. The one guy was like, I used to play 3.5, and I've always been interested. And I was like, well, the starter set is like $20 on Amazon. I can just buy that and we can play it. And that basically was the launch of our campaign.
Nice.
And so maybe 6 months in, I was a player in this game. I was like, oh, I don't know how to DM. You've played the game before, my good friend Francis. You be the DM. And after about 6 months, I was like, no offense to my friend Francis, I was like, I think I can do this. And maybe do it a little bit better. How hard could it be? Francis is doing it. He'll laugh when he hears that. And so I go online and I'm like, how to DM? How do I DM Dungeons and Dragons? And in this was like late 2018, which is like peak Matt Colville is the guy that you go to learn how to DM. That is like right when that was like every Reddit thread was, oh, here, look at this playlist running the game. Go listen to this guy. He'll tell you exactly what to do. And I did. And Francis had to stop playing for a couple months to deal with some family stuff. And I was like, well, I guess I'm the guy now.
Yeah.
Right? And I immediately picked up Against the Cult of the Reptile God and started running it in 5e.
Wow.
And that was the beginning of a campaign that is technically still running today.
Wow. Well, that's impressive, running for them. One campaign for that many years. Mine never last that long.
We take a lot of breaks and alternate things. Because after a while, Francis came back, and so he was like, he was like, well, I was like, hey, I'm running right now. I'm in the middle of it. You can be a player for a while. I got to play in yours. You can play in mine. And then, a few months went by and he was like, when can I go back to my game? When can we go back to Barovia? Yeah. And I was like, here's a good stopping place in like 2 or 3 weeks. Okay, great. And then we did that. And then after that, that was when I declared the rule at that table. I said, if you keep coming here, sooner or later, you have to run.
Oh, nice.
Because Francis ran and I ran. So Eric, you're going to have to run, and Andy, you're going to have to run, and my wife, you're all going to have to run sooner or later. And they've all done it. So.
Wow. Do they all keep running, or did they just do it the once and figure out this is not for me?
By that time we had sort of figured out that the best way for our game to run is in arcs.
Okay,
I have longer arcs because everybody sort of agrees that I'm the best DM. and I have lots of ideas and things that I want to do. Most of them are like, I have like one idea. What if we went into the desert and fought a dude in a big pyramid? Okay, that's that's like one arc. That can last you like 6 or 8 weeks. Yeah. And then after that, he's like, okay, I don't want to do anything for a year and a half. Great, no problem. This guy will run his Star Wars game for a while. I'll do this, and we'll go back to the Doom Vault with Francis.
So it's multiple games too, then, not just D&D all the time.
Yeah. Well, over time we started rotating in other systems because, my one friend was like, "Hey, I check out this." He's just a big Star Wars fan. He was like, "I found out there's a Star Wars role playing game." Like, there's been a Star Wars role playing game since there was Star Wars, bro. like since 1986. I have the West End Games books if you want to read them.
Wow. Okay. So at some point you end up starting Tidal Wave Games. I think 2021, if my research is correct.
Yeah, that would be it.
Yeah. So what was the the spark that made you want to start a company, an initiative? I don't know what you would call it.
So, I mean, I think this year I have to legally declare it a company for tax reasons. Because I got hit with them 1099s last year.
Okay. This is American tax law. It goes way over my head.
Yeah. So last year I made more than $5,000, and so Kickstarter sent a thing to the IRS and a thing to me that is like, hey, this guy made more than $5,000. You better tax him.
Okay, yeah.
And if I don't do that, then I'm in trouble. So, and I didn't get to keep that, which I'm sure we'll get into. But So what happened is right before I took over for Francis in my home game, I started running. I have some distant friends who live like 2 hours away, who I've been friends with for like since childhood. We go over there and we have some drinks and have fun and play card games and board games. And so one day they were like, "Hey, you do Dungeons and Dragons? I heard you play Dungeons and Dragons now." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun playing it. I could run it for you guys if you want." I figured this could be like, we would go over there once every 2 or 3 months and play a short little game and everything would be hunky-dory. And after the second session, things really went off the rails in a bad way. It's a long story, but it involved somebody. There was a guy who... There's a room in Lost Mines of Phandelver, which I shouldn't have been running. I should not have been running that adventure the way... For that group of people, it was not a good idea, because this is a lesson that I learned, and I'll put a pin in this and try and come back to it. Basically, what had happened is there's a room where there are 3 bugbears, and they're playing football with a goblin.
Right, yes.
And you're supposed to feel bad for the goblin and attack the bugbears. Well, this guy who's playing an elf paladin says, I run up to the bugbears and I high-five them. And I'm like...
Okay.
I'm like, you what? Says, I run in there and I high-five him. I'm like, yeah! And I'm like, okay, why are you doing that? And he goes, oh, I'm racist against goblins. And I'm just sort of like, okay, there's a lot to unpack here, and we don't really... And this isn't the time to unpack it. And it just like went even worse from there. And also they had like been attacked by the bandits who were hanging out in the town earlier. And I was like, okay, everybody roll initiative. And one of my friends had said to my wife, like, are we fighting right now? And my wife was like, yeah, duh. And so she thought that my wife was mad at her and they were fighting and not like she had a very strange... She didn't understand the player character separation thing. I either failed to explain that. Another thing happened, like they had gotten attacked by some goblins on the street once at a time, and this is like her first combat ever, and she goes, I want to ask the goblin why they're attacking us. And I in character as the goblin just said, well, what do you think? And she goes, I don't know. I've never played this game before. And so that failed, and I was like, okay, well, one thing, I think the overhead of this game is too much, because they've got all of these... I handed her this deck of spell cards because she was playing a druid.
Right.
Which, you know, all these... and I brought the map and the minis and did all the fancy, you know, because I wanted this to be a bit big. I painted all character minis for everybody and done all that.
Wow.
And, you know, I was like, there's gotta be... I'm like, okay, let's diagnose the problems here. First of all, I don't think 5e might not be right for these guys. And I've long been aware that there were other additions to the game and other systems. And I was like, but also maybe fantasy isn't the thing. Maybe this girl just isn't very familiar with the tropes of fantasy. And the other guy who was a paladin thought it was cool to be racist against goblins. So right. I don't think he has a handle on this either. There's got to be something else. And I'm like, what does everybody like? Well, we're all millennials. What about Cowboy Bebop? We all watch Cowboy Bebop. We know that. You go in space, you shoot bad guys, you take them in, you get paid. Great. Perfect idea. And in a weekend, I had the first draft of our first game, See You Space Cowboy.
Ah, yes. Because I've seen this on Tidal Wave Games' website, See You Space Cowboy.
Yes, that's basically our flagship game.
Right. I didn't read too much into the game, just the kind of like the blurb on the page. And it looks like you use different dice for the different like stats or characteristics.
Yes.
It kind of reminded me of Savage Worlds.
Yes, so I took that from Savage Worlds. So there was a time period in like the mid 2000s where I was like devouring illegally acquired PDFs of games.
Okay.
That I could not play with anybody because I was a lonely kid who had no... And it was 2005, so online talking to people face to face was not, a viable thing yet. So I basically was like reading these PDFs of these games and fantasizing about how cool it would be to play them someday with somebody. And so I knew about the unique dice for your stats from Savage Worlds. I knew about Ghostbusters was actually my first role-playing game, the West End Games Ghostbusters game, because we had found it at a yard sale. We were a big board game yard sale house. Anytime we went to a yard sale or a flea market and there were board games, that was like, let's spend $20 right now and get 13 board games.
Yeah.
And one day we're like, this Ghostbusters one. Yeah, let's take that. And then, we get it home and a few weeks go by and we forget about it. And then one day we're like, oh, we're bored. It's 1998. What can we do? Let's play that Ghostbusters game. We open it up and it's just books and cards and a whole bunch of D6s. And we're like, Mom, can you help us with this? And she's like, yeah, let me look at the thing. And she goes, what is this? And she's like reading through it and she goes, this is stupid. We're not going to do this. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she goes, well, every player has to read a book this big. And then one of the players has to read this book that's this big. And there's no board. It just happens you just talk about it. I don't understand this. I don't know what this is. But once I had done the digging through wizardry and realized how that was it was an offshoot of D&D, one day I'm in the board game closet and I'm like, a tabletop role-playing game. This Ghostbusters game is a Dungeons and Dragons. And that's when I opened it up, and that was like that. So one of the things in Ghostbusters is everybody has their traits, which are like your stats, but then they have what's called a talent, which you get to make up. So Egon might have a 6 brains, but then he's like an expert in parapsychology, which gives him an extra 2 dice. And I ripped that right off. I was like, what if you just define what you're better at for everything? You get to make it up. Because I thought that was cool. What is some of the things? So, Muscles talents in CU Space Cowboy. Pro wrestling, Olympic swimming, yeet, kick open a door, kicking, get these hands, stuff like that, right? You can make them as goofy or usable as you want to.
According to the site, you published also multiple supplements to CU Space Cowboy.
Yes, it's a whole line.
Yeah. So you got that going, and then you've also worked. You recently, I think, released Return to Castle Gygar. No, Ruins of Castle.
The Ruins of Castle Gygar.
Yes. So, but that's an OSR thing, correct?
Yes, it's a mega dungeon.
Right. Yeah. Okay. How mega is the dungeon?
It's 12 levels and it's 366 rooms.
Okay, that's pretty big.
Now, if you're wondering about those numbers and why they're very specific, that is how many months there are and how many days of the year, plus or minus a few.
Oh, interesting.
Because this was a project that started at the end of 2022, beginning of 2023, started by Sean McCoy, who is the lead designer of Mothership, called Dungeon 23. And the idea was every day of the year, you get a notebook or a journal, and every day you write one room of your mega dungeon.
Yes, I've heard about this.
And so I'm one of the guys who finished it.
Okay, so that ended up being this mega dungeon then.
Yes, and then I spent sort of a year doing other stuff and also just typing it all up and doing all the maps and getting it edited and whatnot.
Oh, okay, cool.
And I took 2024 off from that because I sort of went, well, I didn't quite do. What happened was I had done it for the entire year in one project, right? This whole thing was one mega dungeon. And so after that, I was sort of burnt out on the idea of doing the thing every day. And I felt really proud of myself because I accomplished doing the goal. I was like, okay, I can do that. Now I don't have to do it. So I can take a while off. I tried to do another one where I was like, I'm going to do a whole city over the next year. And a month in, I was like, I do not have enough ideas to do a city for a whole year. So that got put away. But then at the beginning of this year, I was like, well, I kind of missed doing it because I did it at my lunch break at work. I would have my notebook with me. And the first 5 minutes of my work day, I would put my food in the microwave or whatever I had to do. And then I would take the notebook out and I would do today's room before I was allowed to eat. And having a consistent day of the time and day of the week that I did it. And I only work 5 days a week, so I would sometimes do 2, or I would put it off for another week. Or if I was close or I had a weekend off or something like that, I would be like, hey, I'm at the end of the month, and the end of the month is 3 days away. What if this level only has 28 rooms? Who cares?
Okay,
it's my dungeon, you know. and then for level 12, I made it twice as big because I'm a masochist. But I missed doing it, and so at the beginning of this year, I was like, well, let me just do that again. And I don't have to do a whole dungeon. What if I did something a little bit smaller? And I was like, I know, I'll make one little area of a big dungeon a week. And that'll be like half the size. It'll be like 115 rooms or something like that. And it'll be like 16 areas is what it came out to. And that's going to launch in August. That's Monster Condo.
Oh, okay, nice. That's are you doing a crowdfunder for that, or just...
Yep, gonna have a Kickstarter in August.
Ah, nice.
I think we'll be the 6th Kickstarter and 7th crowdfunder altogether since 2021.
Wow, that's a tight schedule, or like active schedule.
Yeah, it keeps ramping up because I used to do one a year, and then last year I did 2, and I was like, that's a lot, and then it just keeps going.
Wow.
I think if everything goes to plan, we might do 4 this year.
Wow. Okay. Well, that is certainly ramping up.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm just wondering why OSR basically for the Mega Dungeon.
Well, initially I was sort of at the same time as doing that. You got to remember this is like 2 years ago. I was like, well, I was getting burnt out on the CU Space Cowboy stuff because there's only so much you can kind of do with it in my mind. The anime's 26 episodes in a movie.
Right.
And they made like 13 of a live action show that I thought was pretty okay. Right? But then you look at, I ran the first Kickstarter in February of 2021 for Zine Quest. That took a whole year to get that book done. And then I ran the city setting the next time, the cybernetics catalog the next year, the adventure anthology the next year. That's 4 years of my life spent on this thing. It didn't take them that long to make the show it's based on. They didn't work on the show that much, right? So I was kind of like, how can I do something else with this? Because the core system is fun, and you can kind of hack it if you completely change the equipment list and adjust a few things. And so I was sort of working on this like dark dungeon crawly fantasy hack of it. It was really low magic, like, and had all this weird idiosyncratic stuff in it. And then I was like 9 months in, and I just asked a question to a bunch of people I respected, and I was like, if I had a huge mega dungeon, do you think it would sell better if it was my own weird fantasy heartbreaker system, or if it was just old school essentials? And they were like, if your goal is to make money, you should just make it old school essentials. Right. You can always do the weird version later when it's like a guaranteed thing or whatever. But if you really want to do that, just make it old school essentials. And I respected that they were honest with me about that. And I had been thinking about it anyway, because I had hit a lot of roadblocks with the system. The system wasn't going to be done before the dungeon was. I knew that. And I was like, well, I could do the dungeon and then put it off until the system is ready, but then I don't have, it becomes this whole problem. And then I was like, if I just do the OSR thing, it'll be fine. That, and I also feel like you can run any OSR product in 5e if you're willing. You can sell it to 5e people, and because here's the thing, 2d6 orcs is 2d6 orcs wherever you are. Right?
Fair.
At least in my opinion. You could run it in Draw Steel. It would be a weird slog, but you could do it.
Well, speaking of Draw Steel, because at some point I assume that you cut wind of Draw Steel and became interested in that game.
I was like reading the Patreon posts when they were like, today we tried rolling 2d6.
From the very beginning then.
Yeah. I was like, dude, they flew out James Introcaso and Hannah Rose to the place to try playing out the game. Look, these I was like showing Francis at work. I was like, look, they have pictures of them on the minis. They're doing it. Wow.
So what initially kind of got you hooked on Draw Steel? What was it that kind of brought you or made you want to play Draw Steel? And
I mean, I had been sick of 5e for a while, right? For a lot of the same reasons everyone else is. Not necessarily some of the most idiosyncratic bits of Draw Steel that depart from it, but definitely, like, as I sort of work on my own sort of OSR thing, just because I like to tinker on top of anything else, I just like to have ideas about game design and mess around.
Sure.
One of the things that I wrote is no interrupts. And what that means is, like, any one of the things that really upsets me about playing 5e, especially at this level with all of the cruft that the system has, is I really value speed. And when I play 5e, I have everybody's AC written down on an index card on my screen, and I don't ever declare, okay, this goblin is going to attack you. And then I roll. Then I see how much damage he did. And, I just go, the goblin hits you for 6 damage. Like right there. And so the player goes, actually, no, he didn't, because I have this thing. Or I do this other thing. Or actually, I can confer disadvantage because I'm over here. And it's like, I already told you. He hits you for 6 damage. I'm done. I did my turn. That happens a lot at my game. It comes up, and it started to wear on me, among other problems. Like, everybody has their own particular set of, like, 6 or 8 spells that they hate at their table. And then the thing is, those 6 or 8 spells are different for every single DM who's run 5e. Because you hear some people complain about spells, and you're like, nobody ever takes that spell at my game.
You're right. Yeah.
Mike Shea at Sly Flourish is constantly complaining about shield. His players multi-class to get shield. They do all this stuff. One guy has ever taken shield at my table, and he has never cast it. It's not a problem for me. It's like, but I gave a guy got a hold of a cube of force one time, and I had to invent a guy who wanted to trade him a more powerful magic item in exchange for his cube of force to get it away from him, because it solved every encounter.
Wow. Okay. Well, yeah, true. I've also only had one player take the shield spell, and they mostly forgot to use it. So they had it in their spell list constantly, but they completely forgot that it's a reaction. So they never ended up using
shield,
it.
it gives me a shield, right? And then I have a shield for, like, +2. That's how that works, right? Sure, buddy. Sure. Yeah. Takes all action too. But I was, as the more they posted about the game, the more interested I became in it. Because not just that it fixed problems that they had or I had, but the original ideas that they have about it just really inspired me.
I really like the idea that they've had all throughout the design process, that they want to come by ideas honestly. They might end up in the same place, that
they might reinvent the wheel, but at least they reinvented it.
Yeah. So I always find
it was my idea to reinvent it.
Because in the end, they ended up with the main action, the kind of side action, and movement as, like, the 3 things you do on your turn, which is very similar to 5e, or kind of similar to, like, Pathfinder 2's 3 action system. But they came there by their own by their own process.
Dude, I really liked the earlier one where movement was a maneuver.
Oh, right. Yes.
I loved that.
It is interesting, but
I get why they changed it.
Yeah,
I would have totally been okay with, like, no, you get to do 2 cool things and you can't move.
You ended up being interested in Draw Steel. If I remember correctly, you also have done a bit of, like, homebrew for Draw Steel already.
I was briefly working on I wanted to do a magic user. And that's what I wanted to call it. I wanted to call it the magic user. And I wanted to really lean into, like, the weird 1974 wizard aspect of it. Like, my initial list of powers was the original OD&D spell list. And I was going to be like, no, he's got alter self and like, these specific ones, and we'll try and build them out and see how that works. And one thing, the system wasn't really done yet, so I think we only had the first 3 levels or something like that for everything.
Oh, right. Okay.
And so I was like, that's not going to work. And then the other thing was that I wasn't playing the game. I still haven't really played the game very much because that very first playtest packet that went out with the big tower with the hobgoblins, I think.
Yes.
I ran that for my players and they were like, wow, that's really cool. And then the second one that came out maybe like 6 months later or something like that, I brought that to them and they were like, and at the end I was like, so what'd you guys think? And they were like, yeah, that was fun. It was fun, don't get me wrong, but like we had to relearn the game all over again because they changed so much stuff.
Yeah.
Are they going to keep doing that? And I was like, yeah, they're going to keep working on it for like another year. And they were like, can you just bring this when they ship you the book and then we'll play it? And I was like, that's completely fair.
Yeah.
You guys don't want to have to deal with that. That's been it. I also was going to, at one point, convert over this big hex crawl adventure that I have a lot of material for because I've been running it. And I just... that got away from me, is what happened.
Okay.
Because I have so much other stuff going on. Because one thing that I've learned about myself is that I'm deeply neurodivergent. I have ADHD. I'm somewhere on the autism spectrum, and I don't have good enough insurance to figure it out or get medication for it. And so what I've learned about my process is that I have a long-term attention span of about 10 days.
Okay.
I was first noticing that it was like a week and a half I would be able to work on one thing before something else shiny would catch me. Then I was like, I'm just going to like keep track of this for like a month. Just going to write every day what I work on in my little Discord to myself that I have. And I noticed I'm like, it's 10 days. I have an attention span of 10 days. So what I do is I have tons of projects going. Right now I've got Ratcatcher going on. I've got Heartbeat High School, which is my solo dating sim journaling game that funded on Kickstarter earlier this year that we're going to deliver next year. I've got Monster Condo, which is the next OSR thing. I've got the next CU Space Cowboy module that I, at the beginning of the year, swore up and down I wasn't going to do. That lasted until April before I had an idea. So that's like 4 or 5 projects that I'm just like juggling around with ideas for. And 10 days is, in the grand scheme of things, not that long of time. So if 10 days go by where I sort of messing around with a thing that's not going to come to fruition for a long time, that's okay. I can whatever deadline, and unless I have a huge deadline coming up, which I can push through, because I had to do that for the end of Castle Gygar, where like for a month straight I had to just be like, I have to work on Castle Gygar. I know this other thing is more interesting to me right now, but I have to actually also be an adult and do the thing, because I work a normal job. I work overnights at one of the largest grocery store retailers in the world, and what that instills in you is, okay, you just have to get this done today. It's like this East Coast work ethic thing where it's like, you got to get up and you got to go to work and your feet are going to hurt and it's going to suck and you're going to be exhausted, but you got to get it done because that's how you survive.
Right. And
so, yeah, like I can push through. I'm an adult. But for the most part, if I have a large swath of time with no real deadlines, like I've got Ratcatcher magazine 99% laid out. All that needs to changes for edits and balance stuff.
Right.
But that's not going to affect where the layout is very much. Maybe a line or two here and there. That's already done. Way ahead of schedule, right? Like I have had projects that don't do that until months after the crowdfunder. But I wanted this one to be really tight and have it almost done.
And speaking of Ratcatcher, which is partly why we're here, and you graciously let me have a preview of the magazine that you're going to crowdfund. But by the time this episode is out, the crowdfunder will be live, I think.
It will be ongoing. I think we'll be 5 days in and it's running for 14. So
okay, yeah. I'm very intrigued by the design or like the style of the magazine, because it gave me, I think it's like an 80s vibe, which I really, really liked.
Yeah.
What was the inspiration behind that kind of direction for the design?
Well, so the first thing I want to do is address the name, because I heard this come up on stream the other day where Colville was like, that's not a Orden thing, that's my novels. But And I was like, my philosophy is two things. Number one, someone was going to get to it. It might as well be me.
Fair enough.
It was inevitable that someone would pull that off the shelf and decide to use it. It might as well be me. And associating it with my kind of idea, I imagine it as lo-fi. I imagine it to be, which harkens back to that 70s and 80s feel that you got, which is also very OSR inspired. But I wanted it to be exclusively black and white. Probably most of the art is going to end up being like line art.
Ooh.
From what I've seen, I would imagine it being. And also, we don't have a lot of money to pay for full color, right? That keeps it cheaper. I want it to be cheap and accessible. And I want you, when you get the magazine, to feel like you can throw it in your bag, and if it gets ruined, it's fine. I'll go get another one because it's going to be like $15.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Right. And also, I want you to be able to print the PDF at home if you're in a position where maybe that's not good for you, if you're in a foreign country and you're concerned about shipping or whatever, or you're just like, maybe I only want two of the things from, this issue of Ratcatcher, so I'll just print those out. And you can print. So the Draw Steel books, I assume, are going to be like full 8.5 by 11. The Ratcatcher is going to be a zine, so like a regular that in half, right?
Right. Okay.
So you can print a full 2-page spread on one piece of paper. Right? Sideways.
Yeah, nice.
So you'll be able to just like keep it. You could do that and turn it sideways and put it in your Draw Steel book and just bring it with you, or your DM notes folder or whatever, and sort of keep it that way. So that introduces a lot of weird constraints because we're dealing with page sizes that are much smaller than the Draw Steel pages. We also don't have the final layout. Everything that I'm doing is based off of what we have from the backer PDFs and stuff, and also Twitter previews and like screen caps from streams and stuff like that. And I'm like, it's going to have a line here. I should put the line there. It's that. And yeah, I wanted it to be like lo-fi, down and dirty. Not, Matt describes Draw Steel as a AAA RPG, right? It's a AAA product. It is the highest budget, highest whatever. We're like a mod you get on Steam for that game, right?
Okay.
Right? Maybe the textures are a little janky, and maybe everything won't work 100%. We did our best. We're under a lot of constraints as well, but we want to get you something. We want it to be like really cutting edge. We want it to be like right now. It's for now. Because the thing is, I imagine our audience is people who have been playing with the Patreon packets, which don't have the layout and are like just plain text on white background. So we're sort of emulating that in a way that is just like, you're an adult, you can make up the difference, right?
The design and layout that you have for at least the thing that I've seen, I really, really like it. The text is like very clear. The headers are really like clear with it.
See, that's all me too. So this is just ego stroke.
Well, in that case, fantastic work. I really enjoyed just looking through it as a piece of art.
So when I funded CU Space Cowboy, originally I was going to have a friend of mine who has layout experience and has, as we internally call it, the Adobe. Right? Okay. You have the Adobe. You could do the layout. And then their life made it so that they couldn't do the layout. And I waited way too long. I was like, I can get this book done in 6 months if my friend lays it out. Well, 6 months came and went, and it ended up taking a year. Nobody was upset, and we delivered it just fine, which is great for me. That nobody got mad at me and was upset and decided that they were never going to buy anything again.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
So I had to do it. And Affinity Publisher, which is one of my recommendations, actually, had a 50% off sale. And this was version 1, so it was even cheaper than it is now. I think I paid like $25.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Okay.
And I was like, I'll just see if I can learn this thing. And so I used to be in a band. It was really more of a solo project. It wasn't a band. And I was in a band with my wife called Reapers. We were a Mass Effect themed synthwave band. All the stuff is still up there, by the way. You can buy it if you want. I think I still have some CDs laying around. But I did all the layout and graphic design for that in Paint Shop Pro 5 from 1998.
Wow.
So I have the eyes for it. I just didn't have the tools. And so as soon as I had Affinity Publisher, I was like, all these problems that I had laying out text, where text would not be right. Text would be too long to fit on the number of lines, and I would have to do all this janky, weird stuff to move it. In Affinity, it's just, you do it. It has the tools to successfully do that. And within like a couple months, I had the first draft of CU Space Cowboy done. And that, I just learned how to do it. I looked at how other books were laid out that I liked and thought had good layout, and I emulated that. And over time, I've been doing it 5 years now, something like that. I just learned the program and where all the things that I need to do are, and how to use the baseline grid and align things to the grid, and how to make text fit where you need it to fit without looking completely stupid, and do all the fancy tricks.
I was looking at the contributor list basically to this issue, and it's a lot of names that are recognized from the MCDM community.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what I did. That's insane. I'm like, Chris Hopper, who's working on the real book, contributed to this. Pesto, who also, I believe, worked on the real book and would, be a get even if he wasn't.
Yeah.
It's right there.
And I also recognize Sam McGurn's name, who's also done both homebrew and I also think some video stuff. Oh, yes, and I also wanted to mention, I see you also got Dojicon doing some artwork.
Yeah, there's
which I've had on a previous episode of Goblin Points.
There's a picture of a mimic that he drew that is bonkers.
He does fantastic work. I'm a big fan of his artwork. So this the magazine, you're going to do like a physical run of it in addition to like a PDF. Is that correct?
Yes. The goal is to always have physical copies as in stock as possible.
Oh wow!
Given the limitations of whatnot. But this first run is going to be limited to 200 copies for a lot of reasons. Castle Gygar ended up being like 350 copies, and trying to get that out earlier this year, I basically, like, toward the back half, I had to break down and have a bunch of people come over to my house and help me out.
Okay, yeah.
Just because the stress of doing that, I kind of didn't expect to do that many. Now that I've done it, I can mentally prepare for that and give myself more time to do it too, because the thing is, I had said, okay, everything's gonna be shipped by this date,
right? And
then because there was so much of it, I literally could not keep up with that and had to recruit some folks. So I'm limiting it. Only the first run is only 200. The other reason for that is I don't know if this is going to be a success.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Plain and simple. And so constraining it to 200 gives us a lot of flexibility with that. It tells me basically exactly the upper cap for how much this can make. Right? Now, obviously PDF sales are going to be on top of that, but PDF, in my experience, PDF sales are always lower than physical sales.
Okay.
At least for my products, and so I can assume that will be true. Especially because I price the two things competitively. The PDF for this is going to be, it's either $8 or $10. I might have bumped it to 10 and been like, screw them, they'll pay 10. But it might be 8. I'm pretty sure it's 8. I think I went back on that. And the physical will be 15. So like when the physical is only that much more, there's almost no reason not to get it. Just because, I'm already putting in my credit card information and doing the thing. What's another? It's under $20.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? That is a sweet spot price point that I think will get a lot of people on board to check it out. And yeah, I'm limiting that first run to 200. Now, if and hopefully when it's a success, I can, get that reprinted, because the printing is actually one of the cheapest things in the production pipeline.
Oh.
When I make my budgets, like, the cost for printing is about as much as I pay my art director on CU Space Cowboy.
Huh.
I actually have an art director. It's crazy. Which, again, they do a lot of really, really great work for me and make the books 1,000 times better. But they are my art director, so that twice a year I can give them a couple $100.
I also wanted to mention, which was a very welcome surprise, I should say, when I first I see like the title or the cover page, the cover art, which is also great, and it kind of sets the tone immediately. Then I open to the next page, and it goes Ratcatcher Magazine Creator License 1.0, and what I'm reading is what I assume is an adapted license from the MCDM Creators License.
We just wanted to use the Draw Steel Creator license, but then Pesto was like, I don't think you can.
Oh.
I think that the literal terms of it specify that it's MCDM.
Right.
You can't release something under the Draw Steel Creator license because you don't own Draw Steel. And I was like, yeah, that's a good point. And I went back and forth of whether I would use Creative Commons or not, and I figured this was the easiest way to do it. So basically, you'll be able to redistribute all of the text that's in Ratcatcher freely, however you'd like, as long as you include that little bit of text that's basically 2 little lines that say some materials from Ratcatcher magazine, etc., etc.
Wow. Basically why?
So here's the thing. I'd make it public domain if I thought I could get away with it. I actually, all of my books, I wrote a sort of manifesto on my blog 2 years ago called the Public Domain Statement. I believe that modern copyright law in Western society is a sham. I believe that corporations have put a stronghold on art over the last 100 years that is choking the lifeblood out of Americans in Western society and our ability to freely create. When copyright law was first established in America, it was 7 years after publication date.
Right, yeah.
Right? You would put something out and you had 7 years to monetize that before everybody else could go, okay, it's mine now. I can do whatever I want. And, through various whatnot, they've extended that out now to lifetime of the author plus 100 years or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's nonsense. I grew up with Spider-Man and Venom. Why can't I make my own Spider-Man and Venom comic book? The way that somebody who in the 1920s grew up with, I don't know what characters were.
Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Well, Frankenstein was its own thing, but in the 50s, nobody owned Frankenstein. It had passed into the public domain. So they were like, let's remake Frankenstein in the 50s. Well, let's do it in the 70s. The Hammer horror movies. We'll remake Dracula. Steven Spielberg could make his own Peter Pan movie in the 1990s, right? Why can't I make a Spider-Man movie?
Right.
I'm not allowed because Disney say so?
Basically, yeah.
Like that sucks. That sucks. And that's the reality of the law that we live in. You have to play the hand that you're dealt. But all of the See You Space Cowboy line and all of that literally says on the front page, not the front page, but the front credits page, it says all text within this document will become public domain on January 1st, 2030 X. 10 years from the original date of publication.
Huh.
So literally public domain 10 years from now for all of my personal projects. Ratcatcher won't be that because we aren't allowed to do that. But basically, I don't want this stuff to just die here.
Right.
I want it to live on. I call Ratcatcher a community zine because I don't have an article in there. I did the layout and I did all the cat wrangling and I'm fronting the money, but I didn't write my own so I could be like, hey, here's my little thing I'm going to sneak in there. I came from the community. I went to the community and I said, who's got stuff that they can put in there? And a whole bunch of hands went up and I went, great, let's all get together and make something. And I didn't want their things to just be there. Because number one, I could go under. This could all go crashing down. I could make a series of horrifying mistakes, and a year from now, there will be no more Ratcatcher magazine. There will also be no more me. I will be stuck working my dead-end job forever because of a series of bad decisions I made, right? And so I wanted the authors to be able to take their thing back.
Right.
In the most ethical and legal way possible. So I'm like, well, if you want to take your Mimic article and expand that out and release, the Mimic for Draw Steel, you should be able to do that. I shouldn't own this thing. I shouldn't hold it hostage from you, the guy who did all the work,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there's that. And also, other people are going to be like, boy, I need a mimic for my adventure, but I don't have the time to design one, or I don't know how to because I'm an adventure designer, not a monster designer. And then I'd have to pay someone to do that and do all this stuff. And it's just going to be a huge pain in the ass. Wait, there's a mimic in Ratcatcher. I heard Ratcatcher has a mimic. Oh, this is perfect. And they can just copy and paste the text, put it in their own layout, and boom, they're good to, and it lives on. And all they have to do is credit Ratcatcher magazine. I probably should amend that license to say that you have to credit the original authors. That's a good idea. The other thing is it doesn't cover the art, similar to the MCDM license. And the agreement that I have with the artist is I don't actually own the art either. They retain the rights to their art and can resell it.
Nice.
In whatever format they want. So all of the art, I assume, will maybe end up as stock art that you could go and pay a couple bucks to get and put in your own thing. And that is really useful because just because something is drawn for draw steel doesn't mean that it can't be used for other RPG material.
Sure.
Right? That great mimic drawing that we were talking about can go in any fantasy D20 book. And so that's going to be a source of income for the artist. And part of why I'm doing that is this initial run, we don't have a lot of money because I can only front so much. Like, I took the profits from Castle Gygar and I reinvest back in my business. I don't just take that money and run away. I pay myself the least of anyone out of my collaborator lists, right? For the first couple books, I didn't pay myself anything. I think I skimmed about $100 off of shipping for the first Sea of Space Cowboy book. Because I was like, shipping I think will be this much, and it turned out to only be this much. It was like $100. I'm like, that goes in my bank.
Seems fair, to be honest.
But so my point is, that's the other thing. I'm fronting a little bit of money, and I'm saying, hey, I can pay you guys this much, and if this fails to fund, that's what you're gonna get at the end of the day. But I think it will succeed to fund because I think our goal is pretty low. And anything we get above that goal, I'm going to redistribute to the contributors equally.
Nice. Wow.
So that's the other thing. This being a success means that everyone who worked on it gets paid, not just me. Now, after the crowdfunder, then, I get to reap the PDF sales later on and any of the reprints of the other stuff. But that's the nature. I got to make that money back, that couple $100 that I'm investing to begin with.
Sure.
Because I also presumably have to pay out for the next one. And that might not fund.
Right.
I hope it does. I think it will. I think we're on track to succeed because I think there's like 90 followers right now or something crazy.
Wow. Okay, that's impressive.
I think that might be more followers than Heartbeat High School. Sad for my anime girls.
And also, I think there's a pretty good track record in the Draw Steel community so far to be willing to spend money on people doing bigger projects.
Yes.
So I'm hoping that continues on the Ratcatchers because, again, from what I've seen so far, including the articles in the magazine, I really enjoyed it, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it laid out with the art.
Yeah, I think with the art, it's going to look really good.
We're nearing the end of our time, actually.
Yeah, geez.
This has flown by. But I always ask my guests to bring some recommendations, anything that you want people to be aware of or check out. So what have you brought?
I have brought a collection of things. The original Wizardry games on the NES, check those out. The art is by a Japanese guy named Jun Suimi, which I'm probably mispronouncing. It haunted me. It still haunts me to this day. I actually bought an art book of that from Japan for like $50. Just because it's this beautiful watercolor monster art that they transformed into NES sprites. It's amazing. I'm going to shout out my favorite band in the whole world, You Bred Raptors with a question mark. This is a trio of musicians. It is an 8-string bass player, an electric cellist, and a drummer. I first met Pete, the bassist, when he was in a video game cover band called This Place is Haunted in 2009 at SetsuCon in State College, Pennsylvania. Anybody knows what I'm talking about, I will laugh. But they have multiple albums. They have a YouTube channel. They used to play in the subways of New York City under a grant, and they're amazing. It's all instrumental music, so you can just put it on and vibe if you need to. Buy Affinity Publisher. It's $70. It goes on sale like 3 times a year. Just do it. Just buy it. It's $70. I know that's a lot of money for some people. We're all trying to buy Nintendo Switch 2s right now, but do it. It's the best money I've ever spent in tabletop gaming. I would use this just to lay out my own prep now.
Wow.
Like I use it. I just have fun screwing around and I make all my own character sheets now even for games that I didn't make. The first thing, anytime I want a game, I redesign the character sheet in Affinity Publisher just because I like doing it. I like using the program.
Wow. No higher praise can be given, I think.
Yeah. And the last thing, if anybody joins my Discord, which you can find a link on tidalwavegames.com, in the public access channel, I have a pinned post, which is all the approved YouTube video essayists for all of your very long YouTube needs. But I will shout out particularly Tim Rogers of Action Button, Hazel, and Cathode Ray Dude. Look those people up. Tim Rogers does multiple hour-long reviews of video games. His Tokimeki Memorial review changed my life, and it might change yours. There's a 10-hour-long Cyberpunk 2077 review on that channel. Hazel is like Tim Rogers, but for old anime. She's amazing, and I love her. And Cathode Ray Dude just talks about old computers and weird tech stuff, but like really obscure stuff. He's like, hey, I set up a 90s phone system in my office. Check it out.
Nice. Thank you so much for coming on. It has been, I mean,
anytime. Let's do this again in 6 months.
Yeah. Well, I would happily do so. This time has flown by this whole hour. So again, thank you so much for coming on Onslaught 6.
Next time, I promise I'll actually talk more about what's in Ratcatcher.
Part of that is on me. I was so entranced by your stories that I completely forgot.
I got them for days, dude.
Thank you so much for coming on. It was really great having you.
Stay gold.
Thank you so much to Onslaught 6 for coming on. I'm really excited for Ratcatcher magazine, and especially after seeing the license and the philosophy behind making the magazine. If all goes to plan, there might even be a next issue in about 6 months. Fingers crossed. Paying patrons can submit questions for upcoming guests. Link to join can be found in the episode description. If you want to be featured on Goblin Points or know of someone else who should be, leave a comment on YouTube or Spotify, or send me an email on tips@goblinpoints.com. Links to the MCDM Discord server, the subreddits for MCDM and Draw Steel, the YouTube channels of Matt and MCDM, the complete link section, and this script is in the show notes. It's also on goblinpoints.com. Next episode is on the 5th. That'll be the news roundup for June. See you next time. Snakkes.